This episode is brought to you by The Manor, a premier addiction treatment facility in the hills of Wisconsin's Kettle Moraine Forest. Their program offers a tailored approach to those struggling with addiction in a secluded setting with no more than 11 men and women. With highly personalized treatment focused on trauma, Dr. Chantal Thomas and her expert team offer an authentic experience, creating the kind of deep emotional change that's crucial for long-term recovery. If you or someone you love are struggling with addiction, call The Manor at 414-930-1930. You can learn more about The Manor by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting discoverthemanor.com.
Thank you for listening to The Path to Authenticity. My name's Tom Gentry. I think of this show as the opposite of small talk. You'll hear real conversations with real people who know who they are. We talk about what makes them who they are, how they became who they are, and how we might become truer expressions of who we are.
My name is Hakhamanesh, and this is The Path to Authenticity.
If this is your first time here, thanks for checking it out. If not, thanks for coming back. I'm Tom Gentry, and this is The Path to Authenticity. Episode 154 for December 14th, 2021, featuring a conversation with Avi Hakhamanesh. It's been a rough couple weeks. Lost my mom, as you probably know if you've been listening, and spent a week in Indiana with my family, which was fantastic, but came back and have been sick all week long and have been tested for COVID, waiting for the results. I'm just going to actually run out and get a rapid test after I finish here. Hopefully I don't have it, but it seems pretty likely that I was exposed while I was home for my mom's funeral. I have a couple family members who are positive. So that sucks. But on the upside, I feel a lot better. Today, I actually feel really much better than I have for a week. Slept a lot over the last few days. I'm kind of behind on everything. If you're up for it, please join me in the January Journaling Challenge, where I'll provide a writing prompt for each day of the month. So, this interview took place on Clubhouse, like many of my recent episodes. Avi's very good friends with David Savage, who was featured in episode 150. They do a lot of rooms together. So I seized the opportunity to talk to her and was excited about the conversation and enjoyed it. And I think you will too. So here you go. Avi Hakhamanesh. I usually don't prepare really any questions ahead of time, but having had David on the show this past week, I told him last night that you and I were going to be talking today, and he asked me to pose a very specific question to you, which I think will be a great way for us to start, actually. It's a boundaries question.
Okay.
He said one of the things that he's really curious about with you that he hasn't been able to determine is, where are your limits in terms of self-disclosure on Clubhouse?
That's an interesting question. I wonder why it came up. Did he give you why he was asking?
Well,
he's very forthcoming. He'll share anything. I mean, that's basically what he was saying. You know, I try to share whatever, and we all have our own limits. Like, I have things that I'll talk about, a lot of stuff, but there are a couple things I don't really want to discuss on Clubhouse. I think that's what it was, that, you know, he's somebody who tries not to have those kinds of limits, and he would like to understand that about you.
That's an interesting question. Well, I guess I'll say that I do think he has limits. He just has blind spots for them. But I guess the way I think about boundaries and limits as it relates to what I'm disclosing, it doesn't feel like to me, I'm pretty certain of this as I'm saying it, it doesn't feel like to me it's something that I determine in advance. And a lot of it has to do with the intention for the disclosure and the way in which it comes about. Like, what is the conversation, and why am I telling this story or sharing this fact, or especially if it's a challenge or something that might involve other people as well. And, you know, if it doesn't feel good, I won't do it. If it doesn't feel right. I mean, there have been times where, I mean, you've been into our rooms and our conversations, and there are times where things get to a place where I don't think we should continue to share on stage. And then I know what that feels like. And then that's when I stop. I think it's just, I guess I intuit it is the best way to say. I intuit it. And yeah.
Well, the question I was going to ask you about it, but you answered it already, is, do you feel your way through it? Which you said that's what you do.
I do feel my way through it. And also, I think there are things where it's not even that, like, we're scared of the disclosure in particular. Maybe it's not because I don't want to involve somebody else in it. I mean, there's things still that we might have a little shame around, right? Like, we are human. And so it's like, sometimes that will pop up, or these other unpleasant feelings will come up, where in that moment for me, it's, although I live in this, you know, in finding uncomfortable places I can sit in, it's just too much. And then I have a little bit of self-compassion for myself when that occurs, and I'm like, okay, well, then that's just bringing up something that I need to look at and work on, instead of pushing my way to get it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, you know, doing this podcast, when I started it, I kind of understood that I was going to need to invest a lot of myself into this project. It's just the nature of it. You know, you can't have intimate conversations with people if you're not willing to meet them there. And I'll talk about just about anything. And I think for me, the question is basically what you said. Is it going to serve a purpose? Is it going to help someone? But the other thing I think about is also, especially probably more on Clubhouse, just my dignity. You know, there are probably certain things that I would just rather keep private and talk to my closest friends about. There's some things that I probably would just prefer not to get into. But again, if I found, you know, maybe at a different place in my life, those very things I'd be more willing to talk about.
I was going to share something else with you. I mean, this gets a little bit advanced psychology wise, but I also think the reason, and I've seen this only a couple of cases, and I suspect that David's in this category, although he doesn't always realize it, is that I think what also happens with sharing and transparency is that in a very strange way, it can be a coping mechanism. And what I mean by that is there is also, for some of us, this idea that if I'm putting everything forth, like if I am coming with all that I have and I'm sharing everything, then the chances of anyone being disappointed is limited. And I know this is not the case for most of us, but it's almost like a relief to some of us to just put it all out there and then have people do what they will with that, and have that knowledge that this is going to get some people away. And then I just know it, so that that tension goes away. And for those of us where disappointment has, like, the potential of disappointment is particularly triggering because of the relationship that we develop with our parents, that way of being sometimes I see is how it, that's how it shows up sometimes. So it's interesting how much we share and why. But yeah, I just wanted to add that too.
That is a very interesting idea. It reminds me of some of us, rather than being willing to endure the potential for rejection or abandonment, will then sabotage the relationship ahead of time to preempt it. It's almost like that sort of thing in a different way. That's what it reminded me of when you mentioned it.
Well, the thing that makes it different is that, yes, I feel like it is the same thing. It is, but the energy of it changes only because that level of transparency is usually perceived as vulnerability and celebrated. And somebody is being their true self and they have nothing to hide. And how rare is that? And, so there's a way to be able to wear it as a badge of honor as well. So it's that's why it's so complicated, right?
Yeah. And that idea, to me, the vulnerability thing, or having the courage to be transparent, is how I like to think of it. Yeah, its very nature is, if it's not real, it doesn't mean anything. It's got to really come from the heart. So if it's contrived, that doesn't work, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's contrived. I think it's so, there's only so many layers that we're aware of. And I think that probably, very likely, most of us who are being transparent from that deep place to avoid disappointment aren't in engagement with that piece. I think so. I think the intention still feels clean.
Okay, so according to your little bio, you're an ex-film marketing and strategy executive turned transformation ninja. And, I read on some of the films you were involved in, which it seems pretty cool that you got to be involved in some of my favorite movies, The Revenant. So how did you make the transition, and why, to become a transformation ninja?
Tom, it's so funny that I'm talking to you today because I've been working on an About Me section of my website, and it's been so challenging because it's sort of is this page is my attempt to explain the transition, and it's a little bit more complex. I understand it. Explaining it to others is a little bit more challenging than I ever thought anything would be this challenging. But I guess I can say that I loved my job. I loved the function of my job. Loved it. There are so many things about it that really fueled me and nourished me. And the interesting thing is that for most of my life, especially since, I don't know, as soon as I got out of college, I knew I wanted to work in the entertainment business. Like, I knew it. There was no other thing I could do. And it's a risky business. I didn't have any family in the business. And my first job was as a talent agent, at a talent agency, as an agent trainee at the William Morris Agency. And it was just information overload, which is my favorite thing in the world. It was just like, you get to know what is happening for every deal, for every actor, for all the projects are around town. Then you could network in ways that I just didn't know was possible. It was like, you were being attacked with information about everything all day, every day. And like, for me, that was just like a gift. And I did a lot of different things on the entertainment front. I worked in development. I worked in entertainment PR, where I was representing celebrities and actors and directors. And I just liked I missed the strategy piece. So that's what led me to working in marketing on the film side. But there wasn't, for many years when I was looking to do this job, there weren't strategy people at the studio. So there was so much strategy in getting those jobs. Like it was strategic to figure out how to finagle my way into those kinds of jobs. And also, some of them didn't exist. It was sort of like I would get lucky to have a, one-on-one meeting with somebody who was running New Line International, and I would just be having a general meeting. And then she asked me to come work for her. And she said, you just come work for me. I don't know what the job is going to be. And so I found my way to those jobs sort of like that. So leaving it was leaving it behind, or that's what it feels like right now, at least. I don't like to say anything permanently, but leaving it behind was so unlikely, because so much of years of strategy and hustle and networking and everything had made it possible for me to be in that position. So that's why it's been so interesting to try to figure out what all happened, even myself. And what I was saying was that I loved the job because I got to work with really creative, like the most amazing directors ever, right? Like, you don't get to work with better than the list of directors that I got to work with. And I don't have a sustained level of attention for one project. So working on movies, I got to work on like 15 to 30 movies a year, depending on what stage they were in. So there was, if I was feeling just tired of thinking about The Revenant. By the way, that was my least favorite movie. It was my least favorite script I've ever read. So I'm so interested. The movie came out a lot better. But I remember reading that script and be like, I don't want to have to work on this movie. But it was just wonderful to be able to hop around from a comedy to a drama or a thriller as I was like feeling exhausted by one. And it just kept my attention. And then the other piece of it was, because it was global, it was these different puzzles of how to sell the same movie to Japan, where it's very different than how to do it in the US. And then you have categories that don't work in certain countries. So it was literally complicated puzzles every day that were fun, and dealing with creatives that were fun. So it was really, really amazing. But what I didn't love was the culture of the studio system and the culture of the corporate world, because I felt really boxed in. And I would be asking questions like, why are we making this movie? Versus, how much budget do we have for this movie? And those questions weren't always appreciated. So I think that's how it felt like. I could be doing all the strategy in the world, but if I couldn't shape the decision all the way at the top on whether we were making a movie or not, and those were $1 billion decisions, then it didn't make sense. And so when Disney bought my studio, there's new leadership team, and I basically negotiated my way out. And it had left this last period of this new leadership team, and the culture that was instilled even within those few months made me feel so unhappy that, like, for months, even after I left, and I had no idea what I was going to do, literally no idea. I couldn't even look at an article. I was the kind of person that would get up at 4 a.m. every morning just to see what trailer had launched and what it meant for our trailers and all of that kind of stuff. And it was just like, I was done. I was done knowing about that stuff for a while. So for months this went on, and then so I was just in the middle of nothingness. I feel like now I am comfortable in the uncertainty of what I'm doing, but at least I'm, there's some clarity for me of where I don't want to be, and then there wasn't any. So, but I think I'm still in the journey of what I'm going to do next in a lot of ways.
It's another kind of puzzle, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's I think that not all of us feel comfortable with puzzles, and I wasn't either. I remember I lost my job a few different times over the years while I was working in entertainment. And because I was so singularly focused on only one kind of job, sometimes there would be 4 or 5 jobs in town, period, in all of the studio systems. So I would have to just wait for that to become available. And I remember how difficult it was. Like, I remember crying every day. I remember literally not knowing where I was going to turn every time that would happen to me. And I didn't know what else I could do. There was nothing else I wanted to do. And this time it was really different because for whatever reason, I couldn't even get myself to look at a trade publication. And then I was like, okay, well then now here's this big open path. And David actually helped me a lot because, well, I mean, he had fun helping me too, because he enjoyed my confusion. But to be honest, but what happened was right at maybe like a month and a half after this all was happening, I wanted to try ayahuasca. So this got timed into the plant medicine stuff, which was really cool for me. So about a month out, he had come to LA. He's New York based, obviously. He had come to LA a few different times. And this is right when, about 9 years ago, when he was really realizing that he was feeling people's feelings. And this was just news to me, by the way, because I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right,
I'm feeling people's feelings. That's ridiculous.
Right.
Especially because we met in business school. And at the time, he was like a documentary filmmaker. So our relationship was more of him giving me the ideas or showing me a cut of his movie and then me telling him what I thought about it, which usually wasn't very nice. And then as we became friends, it was, he was David who was going into HBO to figure out how he was gonna get this like documentary series done. So when he was telling me about his feeling, I was just like, what are you talking about? You're feeling other people's feelings. It just felt like it was coming from nowhere. But as he went through his journey of 6 or 7 years of dealing with all these deeper issues that he had, or the chronic depression that he had because of being like feeling other people's feelings, a lot of it he'd been able to see and come into touch with plant medicine and ayahuasca in particular. And I trust him like wholeheartedly. Like there's some like we trust each other's opinions. Like if one of us says something is worth doing, then it's very rare where the other one will say, no, I don't think so. And that's not a relationship we either of us have with many people. So I was fascinated and I wanted to try it. So this is like maybe a month out from when I'd left my job, felt really lost, had no idea. And David flew from New York to bring me, because I was like, I'm not doing this without you, to Big Bear, which was a 2-hour ride to my first ayahuasca ceremony. And I think that's what changed everything for me. It just showed me a part of the universe or life that I had no idea about. And I don't think I was the same after. I think my questions changed after that experience. It reframed everything. So I'll always be thankful to him for that, and then a lot of other things. But it came at exactly the point in life where I was ready to hear or understand a different way of being that I could have not ever thought was possible.
So that served as a catalyst for you.
Yeah, it served as a catalyst for me for sure, because I remember on the way we were driving, and first he was making fun of me. I will never forget. He said, he was taking me to this ceremony and he would be like, these people are really woo-woo, Abby. They're not going to understand why you're coming. Like you're just going to be odd man out. I said, that's okay. And then when I had the experience, it's also, there's so much that I was telling Nicolina, who's here now. Hi, Nicolina. I was telling Nicolina how interesting it is when one goes to try new experiences, because part of it is the actual experience of, like, let's say if you're trying a new food, and then the most interesting part of it to me is your relationship with trying something new. So, like, when we went to this ayahuasca ceremony, I remember it was in this cabin in Big Bear, and there was 10 people, each with their own bedding, that came into this cabin where we were to lay things out and sleep next to each other. And that just felt like a completely foreign thing to do. I don't know these people. How am I supposed to sit here or lay here next to these people? How is this going to go? Then I would catch myself being so judgmental. Like, who are these people? How am I supposed to get along with these people? Just all of these things that had to do with my relationship to the situation that had nothing to do with the medicine. And so it went like that weekend where I was just seeing myself in a different way, seeing my relationship to the world and how I perceive people in a different way. So in that sense, it was such a unique, strange experience that, like, upon self-reflection, taught me so much about, like, who I am and how I've been living just by the way that I was interacting with a new experience. And then there was the actual experience that was like nothing I had ever experienced before. That I don't know. It was just this idea that there was so much I didn't know about the world and the universe, and here was this door that had just opened for me, and I just wanted to dig in and learn more. And then I think that puts me on this other path of what is consciousness? Why is this not a thing? Why is ayahuasca not a thing? Why did I not know about this? And how could I make sure that my friends and my family know about this? So it's almost like it just started me off on this trajectory about this journey that I'm still on, to try to find answers that are so deep that it will probably take me for the rest of my life to get to.
So is this a spiritual practice that you've taken on as a routine in one way or another?
Which part?
The ayahuasca.
Well, the ayahuasca is like, that's my baby, my boo. I think it is. I haven't done it for a while, but to date, I've probably drank ayahuasca over 100 times.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Not because it's so fun, but because each time I drink, it shows me something that is true that I'm not conscious of. It was not in my conscious awareness. There have been times where I've been in a conflict or wondering, what is it that I can't see? Usually when I drink ayahuasca, I'm in a situation, well, not usually, because there was a period where after this initial ayahuasca ceremony, and the shaman for that ceremony is a friend of David's, he and I became very good friends, because as soon as I was there the first weekend, I thought it could be done a lot better. So I sort of got involved
taking
in
over.
it better. Yeah, I did start taking it.
You're that person.
I am that person. I did take over. So then there was an evolution of what that experience needed to be, that I was the catalyst for. So that is great. That like I will forever be grateful for that. And it allowed me to, like we all and started doing a couple of high-end retreats in LA, and I tapped into some of my, girlfriends who were working in the corporate world that would have never heard about this. It was like, I wanted everybody who was me to experience it. If I had, like the same way I had never heard about it, if it wasn't because of David, I wanted all of my friends, my parents, like everybody that I knew. It was like a gift that I wanted to give everyone, but making sure that I did it in a way that would connect with them. And like, what is that way and how do I do it? And then, so yes, that journey happened. But
okay, I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
Did you get your parents to do ayahuasca?
My mom, yes.
Oh gosh.
I know. Well, it's, Tom, the one thing about me is that, it's a weird thing about me, but people trust me in ways I haven't seen people trust other people. So it seems, and that's why I'm so conscious about like what I say or what I promote, because with a lot of my friends who just thought I was crazy when I was doing it, when I was like, you need to do this, it took a couple of months, but they were there. And I remember David said to me, how the fuck did you do that? It took me 4 years to get a friend of mine to come to ayahuasca. And you just got people to come in just a couple of months. And these people would have never been there. And I'm like, well, because it's like the level at which, I guess maybe it's the level at which I analyze things that might feel comfortable to us people who are using logic. There's something about that connects, and then it's almost like I can cross all their doubts. Like I
have
know
credibility.
Well, I've also thought it through the way they would think it through because I had been there. Mm-hmm. I always say I create how I consume. And so whether it's rooms that we're doing or anything else, it's like, it's weird to have to be your own target audience because, people will be like, okay, well, what about other people? I'm like, I don't know. All I know what to do is how to connect with people who are kind of like me. And if I can do that right, that's all cool. So, so that there was, here was Avi introducing a new idea. And at the time, I mean, like it wasn't even legal. Some of the legalization hadn't happened. So it was a really interesting time to be doing it. But yeah, it was really empowering and cool and interesting for my mom, who is, by the way, here. Oh gosh.
Hi, Mom.
So yeah, it's been a journey. And also, I mean, you have no idea what it is to tell your Persian parents that you're doing this. It's like, oh, Mom, I left my studio job to do this. And she said to me, how is this marketing?
Right.
And I said, well, it is actually, there isn't anything. There's nothing. This is tapping into every ounce of marketing strategy a human being can have, because it is redefining a topic completely from the ground up while figuring out how to address every objection people have that are valid. So I think in many ways it's like the most powerful marketing I've ever done.
So that's where the transformation ninja stuff started.
Yeah, well, I guess because I think once the journey started for me, and I don't know if this is fortunate or unfortunate for me, but I don't have slow mode on. Like once I figured out, there's all of this stuff that I need to look at, and there's all of this stuff that I need to heal. Not just me, all of us, but in my case, I was just noticing it about myself. Then there was a sprint. There was many ayahuasca, drinking ayahuasca, and like maybe sometimes there was multiple times in the same month. It was just, I was like, I want to understand myself better. I want to make conscious as many things as I possibly can. And then the more information I got, the more I wanted to know. So it's just been, yes, this journey of this self-discovery that has then allowed me to be in touch with other people's buried stuff in a way, so that I've been able to help a lot of my friends or family through things, because I'm just in touch with a different level of information, not just for myself, but just for the world, which is really cool.
So I've heard you talk a little bit about having been born in Iran and grown up here. What would you like people to understand about you from a cultural standpoint?
That's an interesting question. I've never thought about that. It's the reason that question is a little bit of conflict came up when you even asked that question, is because I have a little bit of shame here. And that's because when we left Iran, we moved to Connecticut, and it was a really tough time for me. I've talked about it a lot in our rooms, but not really to anybody else. It was tough for me because it was just my parents, me and my sister. And unlike all the Iranians who moved to the U.S., we just didn't have any money. My parents had one friend that they knew, and we started from nothing, and with it felt like with nothing, and it was really, really, really hard. And in Connecticut, there weren't any Middle Eastern people. It was just,
very white.
There was no diversity. And so there was a fair amount of racism. I know I see David's here now. I told him this story of my sister and I remember like it was yesterday, my sister and I getting on a school bus, and there were like needles placed under on our chairs. And it was sort of this like survival thing. Like every day felt like survival. The survival just to, fit in, survival because there was no English as a second language in our school. So if we didn't know how to ask for the bathroom, we just had to figure it out. And survival on just this other level of like how not even how do I fit in? How do I get through the day with that, when there's a needle on the bus for me? So, and not really having not really wanting to share necessarily this stuff with our parents at the time because I already know how much pressure they were under. So it was just this, there was a little bit of in order to fit in, there was a little bit of shying away from where I was from. And I also remember, my mom is here, so she'll remember this. From our culture, like when you're not supposed to shave your legs. And if you even have a unibrow, you're just supposed to like be in your fully bushy eyebrow glory. And I would go to school and the other girls did not have hair on their legs and they did not have a unibrow. And I was not allowed to do that. So I just took a razor and I just took out half of one of my eyebrows while trying to take out the unibrow.
Oh my gosh. It breaks my heart.
So there was a lot of this kind of stuff happening. So for me, it was just a little bit of shying away from where I came from, it felt like for survival. And there was a little bit of shame. And I think it's taking me a long time to come back to the beauty of my culture, to the history of my culture, to reconnect with like all the rich, amazing, like beautiful things about my culture and the music and the poets and the soul, because that shame was still in me for so long. And I was actually telling David this last time when I went to go visit him in upstate New York, and we did some ceremonies together. In one of them, the language being spoken to me, and I was speaking to my younger self in Farsi. And it was so emotional. It felt like I was like coming back home to myself in a way. I was healing that shame. But even when you asked me the question, a little bit of it came up. So I guess what I can offer about my culture, or me and my culture, is that it's beautiful, and that I'm so happy to be in a place to be starting to reclaim it.
So was it the late 70s when you guys came here?
It was the 80s. So I lived in Iran before the revolution, during the war and the bombings, and then after. So it was,
so you saw it all.
Yeah.
Turmoil.
Turmoil, going down to the basement when there were bombings and taking enough food so that if we couldn't come back up, we would be okay. I've lived through war too, which is in a lot of ways a blessing, by the way, because I also was always puzzled by this lack of fear of death in myself. And I had to really sit with it to realize where it came from. And it was like, oh, I've already integrated that when I was younger. So yeah, it's been a gift in so many ways. But yeah, that's a lot for a person to go through before they get to be where I am. So yeah.
Well, and having grown up in the 80s, with the hostage crisis, all that stuff. I mean, I remember it was an atmosphere of hostility that you must have grown up in the States. I think about, there was a bumper sticker when I was a little kid, and I grew up in the Midwest, but it was a bumper sticker that said, "Hey, Iran." And I say it that way because that's how they say it in Indiana. "Hey, Iran." And it was Mickey Mouse with his middle finger sticking up.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And, it's like, generally speaking, we're so ethnocentric as Americans and have this sort of attitude of exceptionalism that, I mean, if there's one country that, if there's a pecking order of which one's good and which one's bad, and you asked any American, they'd probably say Iran is the worst.
I believe that.
Yeah. So that had to be hard.
It was hard. I think that's where a lot of the, that's part of the challenge. I think when the first few years we were here, but there's the complexity of it is that, coming from Iran and living through being a child when the Shah was there, and then living through the war, and then being there afterwards, there was a level of disenchantment that we already had with our own government at this point, because there was so much corruption. There's always corruption. I think that it was just through the Shah years too. So there was this like having to deal with that, but then coming to a strange country where it was no longer your own people. It wasn't like you were revolting against your own government. It was just like, oh, I'm already revolting against this government, but now I've come here to survive. And then there was this much more like surface level, without the deeper understanding of, why Iran might suck right now. It sucks for me because, what the government was saying, or they were standing for, and what they were actually doing were different things. But the sort of the level of hatred that my sister and I, at least in school, were on the other side of, was not about that. It was about, you are bad people.
Right.
Leave our country. So
right. Kids are brutal with that stuff too.
Yes, kids are brutal. And I think Connecticut in particular was difficult. Because a couple of years later, when we moved to California, there's such a big Iranian population here. They are, people make fun that, people joke that Iranians own LA because they own, Beverly Hills. They own all the real estate and the most glamorous parts of town. So, it was an interesting time, I suppose.
And then why did your family move to LA?
Oh, I think what happened was we lost everything. My mom and dad went into business with their friend and they started a pizzeria. And somehow it didn't work out. Like the business wasn't very, very good. And as they were sort of getting out of the weeds of the business, my mom's friends, basically, they weren't really honest. I think something to do with the money that we had put in, we didn't get our share out. So we had nothing. Back to having nothing. And my sister Aviz and I really wanted to go to Disneyland. We wanted to go to Disneyland, and my parents wanted to take us to Disneyland. So we just got in our car
Wow.
and came here to go to Disneyland. And then we got really lucky because in Iran, my dad was a hospital administrator. And when we got here, obviously survival for a while, like, because we had, again, nobody, nothing, starting again from scratch because they had lost whatever the investment was in this business that they put up for. And my dad was working night shifts in an Iranian restaurant as a manager. And one of the physicians who used to work for him came in and recognized him. And, the people that worked for him used to love him. So he couldn't believe that's where my dad was working. And he basically sponsored us so that he could get a green card and we could become legal. So that's sort of how we ended up being able to stay and, becoming legal in the U.S.
Wow. That's a God thing.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now from a business standpoint, besides showing up here every day on Clubhouse?
I don't know if I have a really good answer for you. I think that I have let go of the need, and I know, like, this is nerve-wracking for most people who know me, except David. I've given up on the need to know, and I'm really tapped into my intuition, and I just literally do things that I think I should do. And I don't have an answer for the money part of it right now, and that's okay with me. But what I am doing what I am doing every day is figuring out what I want to do when I wake up and what I want to learn and who I want to know and what conversations do I want to spend my life having and with whom. And I, like, there is a knowing that this is going to direct me to the right place. Obviously my experiences in branding, and, I did have clients, like I had some public figure clients since I left that, I helped them with their overall strategy and like how to integrate their businesses into a bigger brand architecture and all of that stuff. And I can do that any day. I've been really resistant. There's something inside of me that's extremely resistant to taking on anything that doesn't really excite me. Like, if I'm not really excited about it, I just can't get myself to do it. So I'm really excited to learn about dreams. So I learned, I met Nicolina, and we've been talking about dreams every other week here on this platform, and getting to know the top people in that world. I'm just I know I'm at the beginning of something really cool here. I don't know what it is. I've been loving having these rooms with David and amplifying his voice too, because I do think that he is, I do believe him to be one of the top thought leaders in the realm of psychology. And he will have the awareness that he deserves. He will have it. I have no doubt about that. The truth that's being spoken in our rooms is not like anything I've ever seen before. And so I really, I want to be on that journey with him as well. So I think he was part of the reason I'm able to be on this journey that I'm on. So I trust the path that's going to. So I just want to work with people that excite me and amplify the voice of anything that feels really great to me. So that's where I'm going, but I don't have a better answer for you.
No, you had the best answer. I mean, this is why I do this podcast, to, help people see that you can do this. You can go live your life this way. We have agency. We don't have to follow the script, right?
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing about this. You have to be pulled somewhere. I tell David this all the time, because he says to me, he's like, I'm just on the Avi train with this Clubhouse thing. I don't know where it's going. I'm just on the Avi train. And I'm like, David, I don't know where it's going either. But we trust where it's going, not knowing where it's going. But it's really, 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 really hard to sit in there, in that unknowing. It's really hard. And it's really hard for me, and I'm doing it. But I mean, just the thought, like the level of discomfort that people have with what I'm doing is really hard. Like
they have with it.
Yes. People need to know how to categorize you. It's a human need. People need to know. It's like when I used to, the Clubhouse was the perfect place for this, because I would come on here and then I would get on the stage and people like, introduce yourself. And I'm like, okay. And then if the introduction didn't serve their understanding so that they could categorize me, they would have to come back to me to make sure they understood what I do. And I would still give another answer that may have seemed vague, but was true. And then it was just this, there's this anxiety when we can't, like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, well, how are you going to make money then? Like, what's going to happen? Well, what about a month from now? Like, what about, like, and, I had this thing with my parents too. I mean, I do feel for them. Because the funny thing on top of all of this is that my sister and I both work in entertainment, and the last maybe like 4 years ago, she got a huge job at a studio, like huge, like she ran international publicity for Warner Brothers films, all of them. And she's a year and a half my junior. And so this job paid insanely well. And, it was just unbelievable. Like, just anybody, like, between the two of us, she had gotten this job. I'm like, so amazing. And so as I was going on this journey of figuring all this out, she got that job right before I sort of left my job. So then I was on this journey, and then she was working insane hours and hating the way, the pressure of what was happening with that sort of a position in that, like, at the studio system. And so it was really, really hard for her the last couple of years. And there was this really big divide between, she was doing like the extreme version of working in that culture, seeing, what the external reward system looked like, but also knowing how it felt on the inside. Here I was, like, going to do ceremonies with David. And then there was this, there was this weird dichotomy between us. And then finally she left her job. So now the two of us are not working together.
That's great.
And and so my poor parents, I do feel for them because they do wonder every day, like, what are my kids doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a better answer for them aside from what feels like the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're here together doing this. So it's intensifying the impact for people who look at us and think we are absolutely insane.
I love that. That's it's the connection that you must experience with your sister, both of you being in this place in life, just has to be incredible.
Well, I think it's connection, but it's also like it's showing me, because her level of discomfort is severe with what's happening. And so I think it's been really helpful for me to have been, like, these last couple of years, I have it, and I can, when things are arising for her, I can be the voice of
hope,
what the future could look like. You know?
Yeah, it's great. I feel like I could talk to you forever, but we probably ought to wrap this up at some point. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. This has been a blast. It's really a pleasure to get to know you a little bit, and makes me happy to know more about you, having spent time in your rooms. So looking back on your life, if there was a specific time when you would go back to the younger Avi when she needed some support, a word of advice the most, when would that be, and what would you tell her?
I think there were so many times, Tom. I don't know if I can choose just one. I think that what I needed to hear was, you don't have to know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think I spent a lot of my childhood in anxiety of what's going to happen, whether it was like when we were leaving Iran, or whether it was like, I don't know if I'm going to get into this school, whether it was like, I'm really angry with this person. How am I going to, any of those things? If it was just, I just needed to know that there was no one answer, and some level the answer is inside. All the answers are inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And
I believe that.
Yeah, I do think that all of the answers are already inside of us. And that's what I needed to know. But I don't think that's what the world understands. So I'm not sure anybody would have been able to give me that answer then, you know?
Well, and if we can reframe this uncertainty for ourselves and think about it in terms of the mystery of it all and how exciting, you know, I've said before, it's like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. Or you can look at it like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yep.
You know? And
yes.
And the other thing about it is it's another puzzle, right?
Yes. Yes. It absolutely is. I say all the time, I get to wake up every day to a world of possibilities where anything is possible. Every day for me, anything is possible. And there's nothing more certain than that.
All right, there you go. Avi. Thanks for checking it out. If you're inclined, please take the time to leave a rating or review at Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you listen. Every little bit helps. Again, the January Journaling Challenge. There's a link in the show notes. Just provide your email address and I'll send you a journaling prompt for every day of the month of January. So, hope you guys have a good week. Hope things are looking up for you. as we close in on Christmas and the beginning of 2022. Thanks as always to the show's sponsors, The Manor, Windrose Recovery. Thank you to the band Punk Rock Opera, whose music you hear throughout the show. Their songs are used with permission from the artist and under a Creative Commons license. Got lots of new stuff in store for you in 2022. It's going to be a good year. Got to get through this one, though. Follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, both at The Path to Authenticity. Check us out on Clubhouse. Links in the show notes. As always, I appreciate you guys taking the time. It's no small thing to invest your time and listen to this show, and I realize that. So again, I hope you have a great week and you end the year on a high note. Be safe. Be nice.
That's our story. I hope you enjoyed the punk rock opera. We have one last piece of music for you. It goes like this.
Okay, go.
Generation, self-made bands, we cut our teeth with bloody hands. The rage has instilled in us, can feed a crowd, give them a rush. Thank you. And good night.